Imagine a world where you're trying to tell someone you're joking, but your face is invisible, your tone is hidden, and all you've got are cold, black letters on a screen. No smile, no wink, no playful sarcasm, just text. Now picture sending the wrong message to a crush or a boss because they couldn't read your tone. For us today, emojis solve that problem instantly. A wink or a laughing face clarifies everything. But before those colorful icons invaded our screens, humans had to invent clever, sometimes bizarre ways to express emotions online. And believe it or not, this secret history of digital self-expression is filled with strange inventions, psychology experiments, and cultural battles you never expected. This is the untold journey of how we laughed, cried, flirted, and fought online before emojis even existed. When the internet was young, it wasn't even called the internet. It was a clunky network of computers, used mostly by researchers and computer geeks. Messages were made entirely of plain text. Imagine an online world without images, GIFs, or even colored fonts. Just letters. And yet, people had feelings. They wanted to joke, argue, even fall in love. But how do you flirt through text when sarcasm doesn't translate? That problem forced early users to invent their own language's secret code of sideways faces, keyboard tricks, and raw creativity that laid the foundation for emojis. The first seeds of this came in the late 1970s. On primitive online forums called bulletin board systems, people were already experimenting with how to write emotions. Whiteauthorn, humor, could turn into offense. So many writes, "That's just great," and nobody knows if they're celebrating or furious. Miscommunication was constant. Then, in 1982, something revolutionary happened. A computer scientist named Scott Fulman proposed a solution on a message board at Carnegie Mellon University. He suggested using a colon, a dash, and a parenthesis to form a sideways smiley face, just 3 characters, but instantly recognizable as a grin. It was a tiny invention with gigantic consequences. It was the birth of the emoji. The effect was immediate. For the first time, people could inject tone into cold text. A sarcastic comment followed by, suddenly read as a joke. A heartfelt message ending with, instantly, conveyed sadness. In fact, these little sideways faces became so powerful that they spread across early online communities like wildfire. And they weren't just most creative users. Invented winks, big grins, and even shock. Oh! It was the internet's first emotional toolkit. But here is the part most people don't know. Emoticons didn't just make conversation fun, they changed psychology. Studies later showed that when people read a message with an emoticon, their brains processed it like a real human facial expression. In other words, your mind says and interprets it as if someone just smiled at you. Think about that for a second. A few punctuation marks hacked the human brain into feeling real emotions. Yet emoticons weren't the only way people expressed themselves. Long before emojis, users relied on what you could call keyboard art. Using nothing but text characters, people created intricate designs known as ASCII art. Anti-ray faces, hearts, and even dancing stick figures could be built from slashes, brackets, and letters. On early chat systems, someone could send a hug by typing out something like this. Ziz. Suddenly, the digital world wasn't so cold. It had warmth, creativity, and personality. And here's the wild part. ASCII art was often used in online flirting. Sending someone an elaborate heart built entirely from punctuation was the 1980s equivalent of sending a rose emoji today. But the real explosion of emotional expression came with chat rooms in the 1990s. Imagine being on a instant messenger or MSN messenger. Every beep meant a new message, and with it, a new opportunity to show who you were. People invented new text codes to save time and add flair. LOL wasn't just about laughing, it was a way to soften a sentence, to show friendliness, to prove you weren't angry. BRB and TTYL gave conversations rhythm. In fact, linguists say that online shorthand was as much about emotion as it was about efficiency. Typing he instead of ha wasn't random, it carried different shades of meaning, just like laughter in real life. Then came one of the strangest chapters in this history, Emoji. While the West embraced sideways emoticons, Japan flipped them upright. Instead of turning your head to see a smile, Emoji like, or T_T, looked like proper faces staring right back at you. The Japanese internet culture valued nuance, and Emoji allowed incredible emotional variety. Want to show happiness? Want to show crying. Underscore. Want to show anger. These symbols weren't just decoration. They reflected cultural differences in how emotion was expressed. Western emoticons focused on the mouth, while Japanese Emoji emphasized the eyes. That detail mirrors real human psychology. In Western cultures, we read mouths for emotion. In Eastern cultures, eyes are the key. Without even realizing it, digital self-expression was exposing cultural psychology. By the early 2000s, text-based emotions had become so powerful they were shaping identity. Teenagers would carefully choose whether to type in lowercase or uppercase. Adding extra letters like hey instead of hey signaled friendliness, flirtation, or sarcasm. In fact, psychologists found that people could read tone in text through these subtle signals almost as clearly as they could in speech. Our brains adapted to this new language with stunning speed. But here's the twist. Even though people were innovating constantly, there was still a hunger for something more universal. Emoticons and Emoji were clever, but they weren't standardized. A sideways smile on one platform might break into nonsense on another. ASCII art looked beautiful in one font, but messy in another. People needed an emotional language that worked everywhere, and that's where emojis were born. In 1999, a Japanese designer named Shigetaka Kurita created the first official emoji set for a mobile phone service. Just 176 tiny images, but they changed everything. There was a heart, a smiley face, a tiny umbrella. These weren't just symbols. They were a cultural revolution. Suddenly, emotions had a universal form, recognized across devices and countries. And yet, emojis didn't appear out of thin air. They were the culmination of decades of improvisation ASCII art. Emoticons, Emoji all distilled into colorful icons. But before emojis took over, those earlier methods remained deeply loved. Even today, people still type LOL or not because they need to, but because it feels personal. Emojis may be polished, but text-based expressions carried raw creativity. And if you look closely, the DNA of those old tricks is still everywhere. Memes that use weird text faces, Twitch chats filled with lol or KEKW, even the way people type in lowercase to seem casual, it all traces back to those early experiments in emotion without image. And here, as something few people realize, our digital expressions have rewired how we think about communication itself. Before the internet, writing was formal. Letters, essays, even notes had a certain structure. But once people had to write casually online, they began breaking rules, dropping punctuation, inventing new words, bending grammar. It wasn't laziness. It was emotional necessity. Writing became more like speaking. Emoticons and text shorthand blurred the line between writing and conversation, and that shift permanently changed language. In fact, modern linguists say, we're reliving through one of the greatest evolutions in communication since the invention of the printing press. And yet, maybe the strangest truth of all is this. Even with emojis everywhere, we still crave creativity. Just look at how people on TikTok and Twitter still invent new text trends, keyboard smashes, like ASCII KFJ, to express laughter or sparkles around words, to show emphasis. These aren't just fads, they reproof that humans never stop reinventing how to express emotion in text. So, the next time you send a laughing face emoji, remember that it has ancestors. From Scott Fulman's Sideways to Japanese Emoji underscore. From ASCII hearts to each tiny innovation was born out of frustration, creativity, and a deep human need to be understood. Emojis didn't just appear one day, they were the inevitable climax of a centuries-long struggle to make cold text feel human. And here's the hook that leaves you thinking. If punctuation could smile, if text could cry, if pixels could laugh, what's next? Maybe the future of online expression isn't emojis at all, but something even stranger. Voice inflections embedded in text. Real-time emotional AI avatars. Or perhaps something we can't imagine yet. Invented by someone bored on a message board. Just like in 1982. Because history shows us one truth. Whenever humans invent new ways to communicate, they'll always find a way to sneak emotion back in.